This is the Waitz Report, where global strategy meets sharp analysis. Hosted by Jan Willem Waitz. In today's episode, a special conversation between Matt Fulton, host of Secrets Spies, and Major General, retired, Pieter Cobelens, former director of Dutch military intelligence. Together, they explore the shifting balance of power between the United States and Europe, and what it means for the future of security, defense, and diplomacy. This is the Waitz Report.
My first question would be to Pieter. Pieter, let's start with the big picture. From your perspective, how do you see America's geopolitical priorities shifting in recent years?
Well, Europe still relies on the US for hard enablers, long-range strike, missile defense, strategic airlift, ISR from space to seabed, and high-end C2. So that dependence is a fact, not a sin. The risk is not reliance per se, but over-reliance. Our task to close the European gaps to the trans-Atlantic link. It's a choice, of course, not a crutch. And, well, it's the one and only Mr. Trump who forced us more or less to do that. And that is one of the two things I think he was right. All the other things are questionable.
Yes, like a mix. Matt, from your perspective, and then as an analyst and podcaster following the U.S. intelligence and security affairs, how do you see America's current geopolitical priorities shifting under the new administration?
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I should start with I'm no supporter of the current administration for a number of reasons. Although I do agree with the general, I think there could potentially be some silver linings to come out of this in terms of increased European defense spending and everything. I mean, U.S. foreign policy priorities have been in shift since, I want to say, 2012 in some regard. I mean, there's been this perpetual talk about a pivot to Asia that for one reason or another has not fully gotten underway. We sort of keep getting pulled back into the Middle East whenever we feel like we're out. So, that's a struggle. I think we are confronting a much broader security landscape than we have, at least in my lifetime, post Cold War. I worry about a scenario where our alliance is faced with tackling the Russians and a threat from China in the Pacific at the same time. And I think that challenge could be quite daunting in reality. To that point, I think increased European defensive posture. I mean, as the general said, there's going to be some strategic enablers and everything that we have an edge on for a long time. But if we can increase our offensive and defensive capabilities together, I think that sort of a worst case scenario where we are facing Russia and China at once would be a lot more manageable. If that makes sense.
Yes, Pieter, I would say, the US is caught between maintaining global influence and dealing with international fatigue after decades of overseas commitments. Is that true in your opinion?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the situation we have now is rather special, but most of it is because we cannot really rely on the US president. He is a factor with a huge question mark. If I give lectures, I have a picture of Trump, and then I have two questions on top of his head. Is he a threat, or is he a deterrent? We don't know, because when we had the NATO meet in The Hague, the number 5 was very important, not just because of the 5% we're going to pay on the BBP, which is good, but he was not really clear how much supportive he would be with Article 5. Because the scenario we are looking at, especially in Ukraine, I'm not really worried about China. Really, I understand that we have the Pax Americana and that America as a superpower has its own responsibilities. But if you're not going to use them to be the police agent of the rest of the world, why would you worry about China? I mean, Taiwan is not that important. They make nice tips, but you're going to make them in the United States as well. The biggest threat is Russia, because they're actually making war. And they are making war in such a fashion, like in War II, that they don't care about the loss of human life. And we're absolutely not certain what's going to happen when there will be a sort of peace between, or a standstill of a frozen war between Russia and Ukraine. What will happen is that the next step will be Moldavia, because they belong to nobody, and you still have the other foreign fighters or the Russian sympathizers. And the next step will be one of the Baltic states. There he will taste, like we say, our liver, and see whether everybody is upholding Article 5. There's a huge question mark, because Mr. Putin is doing everything he can, both in cyber and in actual sabotage now and then, to play us a part. He is a master in that, and I think that Mr. Trump so far is acting a little bit childish in it, and apparently he's not learning. I'm worried about it, at least.
Okay. Matt, what do you think? Do you believe the US still views Europe as a reliable strategic partner? I mean, military as well, or more as a competitor when it comes to the influence, for example, on the trade? You can see it that the US wants partnerships, but also wants primacy, it seems.
Yeah, I should say I'm not a trade expert or an economist, so there's not much in the weeds there that I can get in. I think, as far as a strategic competitor, I don't think the U.S. sees Europe as a strategic competitor. I think it's a complicated relationship. It's sort of a marriage several decades in now, perhaps you could describe it. There are ups and downs. I think we're in a particularly rocky point right now. I think Trump sees, this is incorrect how he sees it, but Trump sees NATO as sort of a country club membership, which is sort of that's the world that he comes from, right? And he sees, okay, if you're not paying your dues, you're, not in a good standing, and why should I come to your aid? And of course, that's, not what you want to hear if you're on NATO's eastern flank. To that point, he has said things in the past few months about, Poland has really upped their defense spending, and he's happy about that. And he plays on this. It sort of, will I respond to Article 5? Well, he would say it depends on who's asking. There's a whole flare up in the past few days with Spain and their defense spending. Everything about Trump is entirely transactional, and it's about your personal relationship with him. I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but that's how he is. And unfortunately, we're stuck with him for another 3.5 years. As far as one good example of who manages that relationship well, and I think, how this comes off in practice is very kind of, you don't have to like it. I think in practice, though, it works well. And that's how Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, has managed that relationship. I think we would be in a worse spot with the U.S. relationship, the administration's relationship with NATO, if Mark Rutte was not able to manage him as effectively as he has recently.
Yes, but we can also see another side, which also Europeans are looking at this very moment. Like, Trump is still a deal maker. He's still making peace, let's say. And if you look at the governmental page of the White House, you can see everything that he achieved, which is actually a big list of the economy that seems to go quite well. You can see that the last historic achievement is, of course, hopefully ending the war in Gaza. You can see the removal and deportation of criminal gangs and terrorists to other territories, reduction of immigrants. There seems to be also a division within the American community. How do you look at it?
Well, those lists of accomplishments that you note, they would be accomplishments to him. I don't think the majority of people here would call them accomplishments. The Gaza ceasefire aside, I'm glad to see a ceasefire. I hope We see the hostages exchanged in the coming days. I believe Monday or Tuesday was a day, as we're recording, was put out that exchange could happen. What comes from that, whether there's a lasting ceasefire or whether it comes to some sort of agreeable settlement on Gaza, I'm not sure. There's still a ton of variables there. I mean, as far as we see it here in the U.S., I mean, he is not popular. I think the sort of aggregate poll for him is about, right now, it's in the high 30% approval. He's lower at this point in his term than Biden was at this stage of his term. There are real bad indicators coming on the economy here. His approval on immigration, on ICE raids, their deportation raids. I'm not sure how much of that gets covered in Europe. Deeply unpopular, and for a long time, immigration was his strongest issue, and he's underwater on that and continues to go down. He's not. He seems invincible. I know if you just look at him, he has this air of inevitability about him. I think he wants to portray that. It is not the case. He is far weaker than he seems. Here, domestically, at least.
Sorry to interrupt you, but he even wants to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 with this rebellion law. How serious is this?
It's on the table. It's not the first time it's been threatened. Whether it would work in practice legally is a lot more complicated than him just sort of invoking it. Of course, I mean, the conditions that the administration tries to cite for saying that we need to invoke the Insurrection Act is not even remotely close. I mean, the Insurrection Act is to respond to an organized attempt to overthrow the U.S. federal government. That is not even remotely in the cards here. We're talking about a handful of protests around ICE facilities in Portland and Chicago. It is not. We are not anywhere near what you would, think for invoking martial law. Whether the administration tries to do that at some point in the near future, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's necessarily inevitable, but I'll threaten it.
Thank you. Pieter, about you as a former intelligence chief, how do you view Europe's strategic dependency on the US at the moment? And can Europe actually truly defend itself when Washington steps back, for example? Or is this unrealistic?
No, it's certainly not unrealistic. Well, the US has scale, global collection, and faster task effect cycles. It fuses intelligence and operations more tightly and declassifies selectively to shape the battle space. Europe is more fragmented, selectively to shape. Europe is more fragmented. We do have strong national services, but legal constraints, uneven classification, uneven cultures, and slower sharing. Because the need to know is one of the most important rules in zero trust. And where Europe excels is the proximity, human networks, language depth, and granular knowledge of Russian active measures. We're neighbors, obviously. But we are closing in. One of the examples is I was intelligence director from 2006 up to 2011, and we were very dependent on satellite pictures of the United States. We launched our first 2 satellites now, Dutch. We will have 5, and we will be able to do it ourselves. And it's very important for the intelligence community that you can say to your political masters that the information you have is selected by yourself, observed by yourself, and not just depending on the US, because the US now and then plays games like every superpower does. And so we're closing in on that issue. And my experience with the United States is when I just started, I looked a little bit down on us because we're a small country. But we gave them some proof in such a fashion that they could not even translate their let's say, their signal intelligence without our help, because we had 52 interpreters and the United States had 2. So they asked us if we could deliver some of the African interpreters. I said, I'm very sorry, we don't only do it with cows. We don't trade with people. If you give us the information, we will be able to translate. So by doing that sort of stuff and some secret operations, they finally came to the conclusion the US has a lot of might and a lot of good things, but they cannot defeat a combination of the best intelligence agencies together. It's as simple as that. So I have good experiences with them, but we're now closing in to be able to do it on ourselves. The challenge for us is that we are not a country. So we have several states with our own laws and rules. And the United States is obviously a federal state. On the other hand, the American president is doing everything to get a hold of them. And if he's sending troops to his own states, I mean, can you still talk about one federation? We will see. A little bit cynic on that. I think he's really betraying democracy. That for us, that is the biggest shock. That the trias politica, like we always say, that he is trying to tumble that. That's not good.
Exactly.
No offense meant, Matt.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you completely. And I think as far as those National Guard deployments, I mean, they are a nightmare for civilian military relations here in the U.S., as are the ICE raids more broadly. There was a raid at a housing complex in Chicago where ICE agents, which are part of the DHS, they're federal law enforcement, civilian law enforcement, they rappelled onto the building with Black Hawk helicopters, came in with, long guns, camouflage, body armor, and people who were there said, the military is raiding us. And to that point, they don't know the difference if they just see Black Hawk helicopters and guys in camo and guns, that's a big problem. I think I'm not excusing those National Guard deployments at all. They are dangerous. They are a problem. They should stop. They're not needed. When you look at the numbers, though, a few hundred people, you cannot occupy the entire city of Chicago, a city of millions of people with a few hundred. It's entirely performative. To that point, the National Guard deployments in D.C., they were winding down. They were spreading mulch and picking up trash on the National Mall because there's nothing for them to do.
No.
Incredible. Pieter, do you think also unified Europe defense structure, because, in Europe we're still quite separated in terms of unity. Should there be maybe a route to a European army? Is this also a realistic or idea?
Absolutely not. I'm absolutely 100% against that. We do have a European army. It's called NATO. NATO is not an initiative of the United States. It's a European initiative with two transatlantic allies. So if we want to have war without the Americans or Canadians, we go for NATO minus. We can still use the headquarters if something that could happen, by the way. It's absolutely ridiculous bullocks from politicians who have no clue that if you create a European army or European forces, they're exactly the same as the European NATO forces, only they have to switch the cap, maybe like that, and then they are suddenly the same. It's ridiculous. But this is kept alive by a lot of politicians because I think that's a big difference. They have no clue, really. So I think that, if you look at how the situation is now, we will never, in Europe, never ever reach perfect unity. Functional unity, yes, I think that's a possibility. I think like the European pillar in NATO, with a common threat picture, pooled procurement for key capabilities, or a standing playbook for exercises in crisis. Start with what matters most, air defense, because that's obviously the game changer. We have a lot of problems in trying to cope with the threat of drones. And all sorts of new ammunitions, maritime security, the sea cables we have in the Netherlands Sea. Do you know the Netherlands Sea, Matt?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't exist. It is the North Sea, but we renamed it after it.
It's like the Gulf of America. Yeah.
No, it's meant. But so we will find each other instead of growing outward. And a lot of politicians think that we cannot work good together with the Americans or other countries. That's bullocks. We have NATO standard procedures. We can obviously fight very well. And don't forget, Willem, if you look at the expenditure worldwide, then the United States is spending the most money to defense, and number two is Europe. Even before we raised the percentages, the only fact is that because we're not able to combine that in a great way, for some stuff we have more than enough or nothing. So that's where everything goes wrong. And the only thing where we can change that is becoming one country. Now, I will not grow that old, but I will see that happen. But at least we should make steps to end our defense policy. That would be a great step forward, because we have lots of politicians who say, well, why don't we split up the equipment we want to buy? So one country, the airplanes, and other one, the trucks. But well, if one of those countries decides not to go to war, then you have no planes and no trucks. So that can't be the case. So I think we should at least try to come to a common defense policy. And as a matter of fact, we have that in NATO. But the pillar on that is the United States. And that's exactly the pillar he took away by making everybody doubt whether the US would participate, yes or no. And it's doing exactly the same in Israel. He sends 200 soldiers, and they're only there for logistics. They're not even wanted, because the NGOs are much better in that sort of stuff. So he's pulling back, and because of the huge budget cuts of the United Nations, because the Americans are not participating anymore, I think a quarter of all the employed United Nations troops are coming back because there's no money. Oh. So he's taking the pillars away of a lot of institutions that at least gave us a little bit volatile but waggling peace, and he's making it worse. I'm worried about that. I don't know how you see that, Matt.
In terms of how do I feel, how would the Trump administration respond to an Article 5 invocation, that sort of a scenario?
No, I mean the fact that he is nibbling on the pillars of NATO and the UN. He's stopping with the UN a lot of things. He's not spending money anymore. He's making it doubtful that UN can do anything at all. And in NATO, he made Article 5 questionable. And the Russians love it.
Yeah, I think as far as the UN issue, there's been a lot of cynicism in the Republican Party about the UN and the international system for a long time. I think this ideological holdover, to that point, I don't support it, because I think then China takes the lead when we pull out of those international organizations. As far as Article 5, what would happen in that sort of scenario, my honest gut feeling, I feel like how that would go down in practice right now, I think how he would respond, it would depend largely where it happens, and how the Russians, how effectively they're able to pollute the information environment in the weeks and months beforehand. And the other really important factor, truly, again, this shouldn't be, but it's just how it is with him, is the personal relationship that European leaders have with him.
Yeah, well,
that means everything.
I'm advocating that we in Europe should take care of our own nuclear capability. I think we should forget about the fact that we are too dependent on that. And we should work on our own nuclear capability, because if you look at the numbers, we have 450 million people living in Europe. We are absolutely able to take care of ourselves, and we relied far too much on the US because that was convenient and cheap. And up till now, we love the Americans, because as a child, you hear everything about the First and the Second World War and all the sacrifice the United States made. I love to go. I have a lot of friends in the US. But what's happening now, if you look at the problem in your country yourself, how Democrats and Republicans, it's as if they people from two complete different states who are talking to each other. That's for us hard to get. To get our head around that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well said. Yes, that's how people feel also here in Europe. I mean, also in the Netherlands. And that is also why there is a question of how the American public still supports the idea of global military engagement, or is it more the isolationism, let's say, which is growing stronger, because that's maybe the result. If you cannot join, you will lose in this era. So America can even isolate themselves in the future if this is the policy. Matt?
We're in this strange sort of, I think the public generally wants it both ways. I think this is still sort of bipartisan to an extent. I think Americans like the idea of being a superpower, right? Of being able to throw its weight around the world for good or for bad, if it chooses to, right? But I think we're also generally exhausted by the idea of foreign engagements overseas. And that entirely comes from our hangover, should we say, from Iraq and Afghanistan. It's entirely born of that. I think that would change quite drastically if we were attacked in some way, for all the questions about how we would respond to an Article 5 event in Europe, or perhaps some sort of a Taiwan scenario in the Western Pacific. I mean, if we happen to lose a carrier in the Pacific or the North Sea or something, I think that sort of isolationist mood that is present in this country to some extent, I think that would evaporate immediately.
Right, because what we see and what Mr. Cobelens already told, Europe must redefine itself, maybe not against America, but alongside it. As a partnership of equals and not dependence, and that's of course the way we were following a long time, dependence. And what do you think we should do actually to make this change, Pieter and Matt? What should be the right direction?
Well, what we're doing now, we have to spend our money. We have to take care of it to be deterrent enough with 31 countries not to be attacked. And I think we should start being a little bit, as Europe, should be a little bit more powerful. I mean, I really do not understand why we don't have a no-fly zone above a part of Ukraine. That we can let it happen, that complete cities are bombed out. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I don't understand why we do not allow them to use long-range missiles, both American and European, to fight against the logistical points like every other army or air force would do. I mean, that's really bollocks. We should not do that. You can better not help in such a case. No, I think we should. I think we picked up the glove which Trump in his first term threw on the ground. We have to take care of ourselves, and it's idiocy to think that we are not equal to the United States. That just because the nuclear umbrella, well, we have to take care of it ourselves. We do have nuclear weapons. Don't forget, a lot of the nuclear capability from the east is coming from the Netherlands. It's very shameful but true. We can do that ourselves, so we can at least contribute to a huge threat, which is contributing to deterrence. Because if deterrence is okay, nobody will attack you. Period.
Well, Matthew, if we listen to the general concerning also strategic and security affairs, of course, we can also see that in Europe at this very moment, in my opinion, Pieter, there is still a lack of kind of power engaged person that takes the lead. What do you think? Because maybe we need a kind of stronger leader than we have had up till now. Or am I looking to maybe?
Yeah, are you talking about a special country or at the SecGen or
well,
within Europe, always the American president?
Yeah, within the EU, for example, I mean, there are a lot of members, and you see actually that every country is autonomous. And but there is an alliance now with Germany and the UK and France. Are those still? Is this still the right way also to lead?
Well, no, I think that the magic was always that because we are divided as European countries that much, that the strong person who kept everything together was the US president, because we trusted him, and well, we made ourselves a little bit too dependent on it. I mean, if there is elections in the US, we spend as much television time doing our own elections. And it's a pity that we throw that away, because I think, no offense meant, that this 80-year-old old-fashioned nut thinks that he can do everything with deals. You talked about a list of deals. It didn't make any deal at all.
Yeah.
He's not even threatening. He's not dealing. He's blackmailing.
Yeah.
He's blackmailing people to say, okay, if you don't do that or that, then I give you 100% extra taxes. It's really idiotic. and where he, in his time, was calling names on Biden because this old senior guy did stupid things. He's older now than Biden during his term. Maybe you should remember that. So, sorry for being that offensive. I can really not understand why the democratic balance is going that wrong, at least to my feeling, in the US. But maybe you can make me a little bit happier today.
I mean, I'm no fan of him as the administration general. You can't offend me by putting down him.
It doesn't feel good.
I agree. The whole situation we find ourselves in the past few months and are unfortunately stuck in for the next few years does not feel good. I'm waiting for the seconds to count down. To that point, no. I mean, I think
if apologies, but maybe sure. 1 point extra. He decapitated his forces by kicking out a lot of very, very, very good generals. Nobody's talking about that. And then this childish thing with the 400 generals who had to come together to listen to a TV guy, a reserve major. It was ridiculous. I mean, you can have a very strong army and a very strong force, but you have these stupid generals. Yeah. Well, look at the Russians. They're a great example of what happens then. I really couldn't believe my ears. You really kicked out a lot of very, very intelligent and strategic, educated people. I'm sorry I really hate that.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think that the quote unquote warrior ethos speech that the Secretary of Defense gave at Quantico the other week as we're recording. Yeah, no, I think it was absolutely shameful. You know, you had 800 generals and admirals assembled in a room together for the first time. You know, you'll know this, of course, General, I'm generalizing a bit, but if you're in that room, you have about 30 years of military experience under your belt. You put 800 of them together, that's about 24 millennia of combined military experience. And they were lectured on, you know, grooming standards and the warrior ethos by a Fox News weekend host who was himself a junior officer in the National Guard. To that point, though, I think it's part of it is good that those generals and admirals, or those flag officers in the room saw that. I mean, I think that the absurdity of that was not lost upon them. I think their reaction was heartening, which is to say it was essentially silence that he was met with. I'm sorry?
Very smart, I think, what they did.
Yeah. You know, and that was not, it wasn't the worst case scenario at all that could have come out of that. I mean, I think people were reasonably concerned about a much wider purge that hasn't happened. It's a struggle here. You know, I won't sugarcoat it. I will offer, though, that the same sort of far right populist virus that we are fully in the throes of right now, we're not alone in it. I think the UK is going to have to deal with the same issue in the coming years. There's issues with France and Germany. I know in the Netherlands there are issues with it as well. It's something I think the entire Western world is dealing with it. Yep. You know, and of course it's not the first time we've defeated it. I think we can do it again.
But the most important reason that we have that right-wingish streams in Europe is because we became so democratic that we are more worried about the procedures and the process than the real decisions and things which should happen. We talk too much and we make not enough decisions. So the talking is increasing and the decision making is getting at a lower rate in a period that, because of artificial intelligence and other changes, everything is going much, much faster than 3 or 4 years ago. So the decision making should be better and faster. And we see the opposite. I wrote a little book of a pamphlet. I don't even know what the name in English is. We call it the pamphlet, to at least to give some handshakes how you should improve your decision making in my country, because we are running into elections which will at least give the same results or even worse than the last ones. We won't have a new government for a long time because it will not happen. So the decision making is a real difficult thing, and that's where dictators are much better. It's not nice for the people, but at least they take decisions whether you like it or not. Well, we could say that your present president is an autocrat and is doing that.
He wants to be.
Yeah. And for how long can also the president be active as a president? Because we almost have the midterms. So yeah, what can happen in the U.S. as there is, of course, the government and the Senate, etc. How are you looking at that? Is this all legal?
No.
Well, you can change the constitution along the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, not in concrete, but the constitution says no.
Yeah, they won't be able to. They won't be able to amend the Constitution. I don't see any feasible path to that, thankfully. No, I mean, so we have a few elections coming up here next month. There are 2 big governor's races here in New Jersey, where I live, and also in Virginia. I expect the Democratic candidates to do very well, especially in Virginia. Abigail Spanberger is running for governor. She's a former CIA officer. I expect the numbers in favor of the Democratic candidate in Virginia will be quite high, considering all the jaded federal employees that live in the DC suburbs. After that, the following November, we'll have our midterm elections. I think Democrats are still heavily favored to take back the House. The Senate, it's a bit unclear. I'm not really comfortable making a prediction there. The geography of the Senate races coming up, just the number of states geographically, it's going to be a lot harder for Democrats.
With or without Clinton, Canada, you mean, or?
Yes. That's it. Oh my God, don't get me started on that. We can talk about that if you would like to, but
No.
No, the Senate's a lot harder, but to that point, I think Democrats will almost certainly get back control of the House. And then from that point, we'll have actual levers.
Then you balance again, then.
We have some degree of balance again. There's actual levers to hold the administration account. Right. At that point on Secrets and Spies, our audience is about half based in the US, half throughout Europe, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. And we get questions often, how is this possible? How can the Constitution allow this? The simplest answer is it doesn't. The founders never envisioned that the leaders of Congress would just simply throw up their arms and say, we're not going to do our job.
No.
Wow. So to ask the general also another question, Mr. Cobelens, about is there, well, in this scenario, is there still any chance that we are in time of rearming and be prepared in Europe? If something strange happens, I mean, there's no Article 5 yet.
You can better ask the Russians when they intend to attack us. Then I can say if we'll make it yes or no.
Yeah.
Well, it all depends. I think we really need, if you have 40 years of decay, my complete period in defense, we had budget 40 years long. You cannot rebuild that because it's necessary in 2 or 3 years. On the other hand, we see more and more systems without people, so unmanned systems. We're pretty good at that. We're also pretty good in cyber, so that might be very helpful. But 5 years is nothing. So and it's even like this. We killed so many defense industry. We need pending for a huge part on the American industry. That's why they like us, because we ordered all the stuff over there. That's also positive for Mr. Trump. Because weaponry is coming from the United States, but we are making big steps there. And ultimately, we should be able to do it ourselves. But 5 years, nothing. And if you would suffer attack, I don't think the Russians, even if they stop now, that they can do that. They don't have the power. Economically, I see approximately the same effect as I saw in 1989. I was in a young, good-looking, handsome officer with hair in Germany. And I saw the fall of the wall, which was great, obviously. And from that moment on, everything went downwards for our forces. But, we will see. I think 5 years should be, we see new initiatives. We make our own cruise missiles in the Netherlands. Hardly anybody knows it because I'm advising that factory. It's a little bit of a secret. But we make our own cruise missiles. And it was the top of the bill stuff we always bought from the US. We can do it ourselves. So we have to speed up, and we cannot rely just on the United States because everybody's ordering at the same factories.
Exactly.
And the second thing we have to deal with, we made the process to obtain military stuff very difficult, because those 40 years caused a lot of offices with people who were turning the pennies every time, again and again and again, because we had to be sure with little money that you spend it very well. And these people are still there. We did not say by one law we kick them all out and we take a faster way of ordering military stuff. So we're working on it. It will happen a little bit in that direction, because I'm still at the think tank for our commander-in-chief, but 5 years at least.
5 years at least. Thank you very much. Yeah, because we can see also in the Netherlands that there is some difficulties with producing our defense materials, also due to all regulations that we have, environmental regulations, but also that it seems like defense cannot give any guarantees to some of these companies. But we need to speed up, of course, and we are still dependent of the US. What we can see now, like all the military equipment in Ukraine, Matt, it's NATO footing the bill at the end.
Yeah, no, and to that point also, the issues of munition stockpiles are that's a problem here as well. It's also, I think, compounded by the government shutdown that we're in right now. I'm really curious to see what the activity is like in our shipyards and our forges and everything. There's this running joke here in certain defense circles about, the horror of Indo-Pacific Command leadership seeing Tomahawk cruise missiles and drones just getting lobbed into Yemen. And it's like, wait, no, we actually need that for something much more important. I mean, that's a considerable issue that we both have, and how you ramp up production capacity to meet those demands. I'm not entirely sure. That's beyond me.
So Pieter, is actually the actual power play still Trump, China? I mean, the US, China, and Russia, or wider than that? No.
Russia is absolutely no superpower anymore.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the quality of their military conventional equipment, well, it's very doubtful what the quality is of the nuclear stuff. Obviously, they do have good material every now and then, but not in the amounts which the US have. But well, you should never underestimate your possible enemy. But I'm not really worried about that. No.
Okay. Good to hear. So, Matt, do you have any other questions you want to ask also to the general?
Yeah, I was curious, to the general, to your point there. Do you see the Russians, or the Putin regime, I should say, failure to capture Kyiv as quickly as they sort of intended to, years ago, the famous, 72-hour special military operation, Russian airborne troops that were on the ground the opening few days had dress uniforms packed with them for a supposed parade through Kyiv when they won. Do you find their sort of failure in their struggles over the course of that war a result of sort of corruption and rot over the years since the Soviets, or is there something deeper structural there that's a problem for them?
We call it's like an Emmentaler cheese, that Swiss cheese with the huge hole in it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they have in the army as well. They when they attacked Ukraine, they found out that the tanks, lots of them are not working because stuff which should be in there was sold. I mean, so corruption is a huge thing. And secondly, don't underestimate the loss of life by Russians in the war against Ukraine.
1 million men.
They bury them on the battlefield, if possible, because if they did not come home, the dead bodies, they don't have to pay money to the family. That sort of stuff. That you cannot keep that secret forever. And especially when you're starting to take care of soldiers coming from North Korea or White Russia. I mean, that's not a token of how strong your forces are. And last but not least, the West won the Cold War because of the bad economy of Russia, and it's happening again. We clearly see that they hardly sell gas or oil, and now we're taking care of that Phantom fleet as well. They have more and more problems to get money, so they get more and more dependent, even from small countries as North Korea. That's worrisome. North Korea never played a part or never played a role in the international stage, but now they do, because they're delivering a lot of weapons. And China, they say that they are out of, that they do not mingle in this war, which is absolutely untrue.
Yeah.
They helped making huge drone factories in Russia, which are bombed now by the Ukrainians by their own weapons, homemade weapons. I must say that I have a lot of admiration for the flexibility of the Ukrainians. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just amazing what they've been able to achieve.
Yeah, so we help them, we give them a lot of money, we give them their own stuff, our own stuff, which is also a complicating thing. But they can have a huge amount of all sorts of different systems, and they all make it happen. For our force, that would have been killing. We don't do that. 25 different sorts of trucks and guns and that sort of stuff. They handle it. And we are sending people to the Ukraine now. I'm also advising an factory in the Netherlands who is making drones. And, well, a lot of them go to the United States. I advise our people to go to the Ukraine because they're the most knowledgeable. Mm-hmm. And they do very good stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable if you see that you have drones with chaff and flares and GPS, non-GPS. They do very good stuff. So it could easily be that if your president allows them to use these cruise missiles, that they will have huge problems in Russia. That will make even the power of Putin stumble, I think. And we should do that. But we like talking.
Sure. No, that's fine. The last I heard, Zelensky had a conversation with Trump about this, and it went positive, but there was no real indication on which way they would go either way. And I know Secretary of Defense is coming to Europe this week for a contact group meeting on Ukraine. So hopefully we'll get more clarity on that.
Hope so, because if we do not hurt them. If we hurt them, we also hurt the relationship between Putin and his population. Mm-hmm. Now the population is in favor of Putin because they never earned that much money as they earn now, because they're all occupied in the war industry. If that's gone, then there's nothing. Mm-hmm. You will see lines of people on the street to get bread, like in the Cold War.
The issue of, I guess if I could ask maybe just one more question here, the issue of, you mentioned the families of fallen soldiers, even former soldiers who are now back disabled, wounded, and to some extent after their experience in Ukraine. Do you see that being a real stress point for Russian society going forward?
No, not yet, because there are masters in massaging that problem away. The Russian people suffered even before that the emperor was taking the lead in Russia. Yeah, they used to suffer. We don't. Mm-hmm. If we don't have electricity for 1 hour, everybody is screaming hell in the Netherlands. If you don't have water for 2 hours, then everybody is complaining. We're not used to that.
We're the same way.
A really complete and not really hurtful society. So we're absolutely not ready for war as well. I compare the Netherlands with the United States population just before 9/11. Nothing. Sure. Nobody would attack the United States. So we still, if I give lectures in the country, I'm teasing them all the time. I just can't believe that this will happen here.
Yes, they're even talking about
right, by the way.
they're talking about fuel shortages and big food shortages around spring next year, and that must be a kind of a line where things could really change.
I think it's all wishful thinking.
Yeah.
If you see how the Ukrainians can suffer, it's the same Slavic people as the Russians. They can do that too.
Right. Right.
So I would not put my cards on that. I think we should use our head. I think we should start a no-fly zone. We should give them the missiles to attack the logistical points, because if Putin is losing occupied country, that will hurt him. Absolutely. Because he cannot explain what he's doing there. then. But
Right,
then
but
you have to allow them to use weapons where they are meant for.
right, but Trump was always against using, heavy weaponry of U.S.-made weaponry into Russia. Is this still the case?
No. He did not forbid that.
Uh,
He's losing all the stuff he give him. It was made in the U.S. Most of the time. No, he forbid that those weapons would be used beyond the forward line on troops or in the backland where logistic and factories take
Right.
place. That's what he forbid. And so he
Right.
promised now that he might give them cruise missiles, which have 2,500, 3,000 miles range. And well, if he takes that flag not away, then you can't use them. So we hope to give them, for the end of the year, 300 Dutch cruise missiles, and he can use them wherever he wants.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you very much. Pieter, do you have any questions to Matt concerning the U.S. policy in this? Still, maybe.
Do you have plans to emigrate and to come to the Netherlands, or or do you not like wooden shoes?
So my co-host Chris Carr, he's a filmmaker based in London. He was over in DC. I met him in DC for a few days last year, right after the election, and we had a number of conversations. Just okay, we're going to find out. We're going to live through this. We'll see how it goes. We had some. They weren't entirely serious, but it was just conversations of like, okay, depending on how this goes, how do we handle this on the podcast? How do we talk about it and everything? When you see it, I'll keep a barometer, a gauge to how hot things are. I'm fine here right now. I'm not happy about it, but I don't feel like I need to leave. At that point, we do joke once in a while. I may show up on his couch in London at some point, depending on how it goes. I don't know. But then I can come over for. I can come out. I can hop on the Eurostar and come out your way.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome to come here with more than enough cheese and wooden shoes.
Can't wait.
One of the challenges, I think, is that you see that people are threatened when they speak up, when they want to say what I want. I mean, if people are losing their jobs or have a law case, a lawsuit against them, don't you feel that, or do you really think you can say what you want in your podcast and they would not use it against you?
I do. I feel okay. I feel comfortable. I'm also not. I don't have vulnerabilities that certain other groups here do.
They don't have leverage on you. But if you would be in a certain job, you could be in problem. Get you in problem.
It could be. We went through a real big spate of this and sort of the immediate fallout of the Charlie Kirk assassination. Very much a new sort of a McCarthyism. It's interesting. I think a lot of astute political observers here could argue that the second Trump administration is essentially a response to progressive overreach of the 2020 era of politics here. This sort of cancel culture, I say in air quotes. And now you see in practice, the pendulum swinging right back the other way and then making the same sort of overreaches and everything here. I mean, I feel fine here. I don't feel threatened. I have no issues coming on here or on my podcast and saying, whatever I feel like I need to say. There's no legal backing. There's no legal teeth behind a lot of the threats and the bluster that you see coming out of the administration. Of course, James Comey, former director of the FBI.
Judges in his pocket, let's be honest.
I'm sorry?
He has quite a number of judges in his pocket.
Yeah.
Not as many as you would think. I mean, the Supreme Court is...
You're an optimist, aren't you?
I try to be. I try to call it how I see it, and if I think if something is bad, I'll say it's really bad. If I don't sort of see a reason to panic in the way some people are, I will as well. The Supreme Court is quite conservative and will be for a long time to come. To that point, though, they lose in lower courts all the time, scathing opinions sent out by federal circuit court judges, some of whom he appointed. I think it's up. The rate at which he loses in court even now is quite high. And the court system is slow. It takes a while to process through. But like the James Comey, former director of the FBI, was sort of charged on very trumped up charges. The Attorney General of New York was charged just the other day. I expect those cases to fall apart eventually in court. I mean, there's a reason the original prosecutors that were there said, I don't think you have the evidence to bring this case. We'll find out in real time that they were.
They don't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
So it works ways. But okay.
Yeah.
But good to hear. But the definition of an optimist, at least what the Brits say, is a very badly informed pessimist.
We'll see. We'll see.
In the Netherlands, we say an optimist is a guy who's jumping from the 25th floor, and when he's falling downwards, halfway, he screams, "So far, so good."
Oh, wow.
The real one.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I don't know how this will end over here. I don't. My bones, I don't believe that. I think we'll be okay. I think it's going to be a very long, arduous, tiring, exhausting, infuriating few years, and we'll be picking up the damage till I'm an old man, right? Till I have no hair left myself.
I'm an old man, so I could not share that I don't believe, but I would rather say I can't believe and I don't want to believe it.
Yeah.
In the major part of my life, the United States played a very big role. For my parents, for my people, I've been there many, many times. I love the country, I love the people, at least most of them. So I can't believe it, but we'll see.
My grandfather fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He was in the 106th Infantry Division, which was he was in the Schnee Eifel part of the battle, and that was one of the units that I think took the highest rate of casualties on in the European theater. He, when I was young, but he has a whole story of how he managed to survive that battle that he never shared, and I think about that all the time. And to that point, if my grandfather, when faced with a daunting challenged by fascists, sort of laid down in the snow and died, I wouldn't be here. So I can't do the same thing.
True. That works. That sort of biological things works in this part of the world the same.
Yeah.
If your father died before you were there, you won't be there.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And liberty, big. It's a very important thing, liberty. I would like actually to end our podcast, if you don't mind. We have been speaking about a lot of different topics, and I would like to thank you both for this great conversation. Pieter, thank you for your clarity and frankness, of course, and your insights on intelligence, and your view on our shared future. We hope for the best, of course. And Matt, also thank you. Conversations like this are, of course, essential. It's not about just defense, but it's also about sharing values and the strategic trust. And there's something which we must have to work on continuously. So it's been a real pleasure. And the dialogue between our continents is as vital as ever, actually. And it must remain rooted in respect, trust, and at the end, the shared purpose. Because we share our Western values, I think. Don't you think?
I do. Yes, could not agree with that more. Yeah.
So, saying that, I also want to thank all our listeners. Thank you for joining us on the Waitz Report and Secrets and Spies edition. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow us for more deep dives into intelligence. And we would say stay tuned for more conversations about geopolitics and the unseen forces shaping our world. So you've been listening now to Waitz Report and Secrets and Spies, produced by Willem Waitz and of course Matt Fulton. Join us the next time for another journey into the hidden side of the global affairs. So gentlemen, thank you very much again, and hope to speak to you maybe another time again.
Absolutely.
Nice meeting you, Matt.
Nice
Keep
meeting
up
you.
good work and stay safe.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Bye, everyone.
Bye
Cheers.
for now. Bye. Thank you very much.